Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening. Our webinar is entitled, What do the KAS for Social Studies Look Like in Practice? Tonight, we're going to be focusing on Grade 2 Kentucky Economics, with the focus of this webinar being all about deepening your social studies content knowledge and pedagogy. We are here and partnering with the Kentucky Historical Society for this experience, and so we're so excited that you are joining us today. Throughout this webinar, we would love for you to have cameras on when available and deep engagement into the conversations. The more questions that you answer, the more activities you participate in, the richer experience it is for all of us to really engage with this wonderful learning experience from the Kentucky Historical Society. Our learning goal this evening is to learn about how to design instructional experiences that are aligned to the KAS for Social Studies by engaging in a demonstration about Kentucky economics. Our success criteria, we have two of those this evening. One is I can analyze 2EKE1, so it's the second grade Kentucky economic standards, to understand what the standard requires students to know and be able to do. Additionally, I can improve my content knowledge and pedagogical skills after exploring a grade level sample. So as we dive into this work, we always root our understanding of engaging with this experience with really grounding ourselves in what a standard is. So standards define what students should know, understand, and be able to do at the end of a grade level. When we are engaging with the KAS for Social Studies, it's always important to break down a standard, to unpack it, to have those conversations with our colleagues to really ensure that everyone has a deep understanding of what the standard is asking you to do and have your students do. So if you see here on the screen, there's an example that's all focused around the word understand. So when you're breaking down a standard, and we're going to model this with Heather in just a second, we look at not only the verb in the sentence, but we also look at the entire sentence in itself to see what we mean when we're using this verb. So in this instance, we have understand. So it has, what does understand mean in the standard? Does it mean to make meaning of or transfer? Does it mean to accurately state and explain? Or does it simply mean to know? What does the verb demand in terms of student learning? So as you look at this entire sentence, you and your colleagues will have discussions about what is the rigor and depth of knowledge required when you're engaging with this term, understand, within this full sentence. So now I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who's going to take us through our tool to unpack standards. I will drop that in the chat momentarily, and she will walk us through how to unpack the economic standards we're looking at this evening.
Okay, so this is our tool to unpack standards, and the tool actually has a little bit more involved if you look at the entire thing, but we're just going to focus today on these 4 steps on the screen. First, looking at the standard, and then so on and so forth. So first of all, for the standard, our standard for today is 2EKE1, provide examples of each of the factors of production in Kentucky. So the knowledge and concepts and vocabulary that students need to know to reach this standard, you can find those within the standard on this one. So factors of production in Kentucky are the focus, that is the content that students need to be able to know. So however, there is a little bit more support for you in this. So each of the standards has, each of the disciplinary strength standards have a disciplinary clarification. And so this just provides a little bit more context, a little bit more information to get you started with teaching these standards. And so here on the screen is the disciplinary clarification for this standard. I'll give you just a moment to read that clarification to yourself. Okay, so you can see here that this disciplinary clarification provides examples of each of those factors of production just to help support you in understanding what those are and what some examples of those may be. And so going back to our tool, you can add those then to that second column that, the disciplinary clarifications provide examples that you can use as well for this standard. So looking at the skills that students need to be able to do to reach the standard, here it says provide examples. And so this is going to be similar to identifying. And so the level of proficiency that students will need to be at to reach that standard is going to be a level 1. So that is our breaking down of the standard. So hopefully that gives you guys a good understanding of the standard that we're going to be looking at today during this lesson. And we're going to hand it over to the Kentucky Historical Society. Elsie is going to lead us in a lesson that she has designed around this standard using some of their fabulous resources. So I will turn it over to you, Elsie. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather and Lauren. So like Heather said, I'm Elsie Murley. I am the Teacher Resources Manager at the Kentucky Historical Society, and I'm going to be guiding you guys through a learning experience designed to explore the factors of production found in Kentucky coal mining. All right, so here's a brief overview of what this learning experience is going to entail. So students will learn about the factors of production of coal mining in Kentucky with a focus on land, labor, and capital through analyzing different artifacts that we have in our collection here at KHS. So this image is one of our images that we have here on site, and it's also in our digital collection. I went ahead and I've circled a few of the factors of production that can be found in this image. So circled in red, the coal represents land. Circled in blue, the blue is going to represent labor with this coal miner. And then circled in green, we have this pickaxe, and this represents capital. So before we go ahead and unpack this learning experience, I want to have you guys look over these 3 things that are going to be helping support this whole entire experience. So we have our compelling question, which is how are factors of production used in Kentucky to produce goods and services? We have our supporting question, and later on, we'll look at a task that's aligned to this supporting question. It is, what are factors of production used in coal mining in the past and today? And then we have our standard connection here at the bottom, and like Heather and Lauren elaborated on, it is provide examples of each of the factors of production in Kentucky. So this learning experience is going to open up with something called visual thinking strategies. Has anybody ever heard of visual thinking strategies? I'm just curious. Feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat that you know what it is. Right. So I'm going to basically walk you through what this process of VTS is going to look like. And I'll even guide you through a session of it using the same image that you would use with your students when doing this learning experience. But a little background knowledge on VTS. So it was created by Philip Yenuwine, and he's a museum educator, and Abigail Housen, who is a psychologist. So they went ahead and collaborated 30 plus years of working on this research, and also kind of focusing on 12 years of that 30 in the classroom, like field testing this strategy. So VTS really helps you become able to become like very visually literate and produce visual literacy skills for your students and help them develop them as they grow. So at KHS, we believe that VTS develops visual literacy skills, but also really helps with students' historical understanding. So if you guys ever want to use VTS outside of what this learning experience is, I wanted to go ahead and show a few images to highlight what necessities there are for a VTS image before we get started with our own learning experience. So over here on the left, we have Jackson Pollock's Grade Rainbow. And as a very big art buff myself, I do enjoy this image a lot, but it's not the best for VTS. Just because with VTS, you want your students to be able to observe and discuss what they see visually in it. A lot of what Pollock's work is wanting them to interpret how it makes them feel and everything. So that's not the best image for VTS, but we can still appreciate that it is an amazing piece of artwork. Here in the middle, we have, oops, my bad. There we go. We have Thanksgiving by Doris Lee. This is going to be a great image for VTS because My bad. There we go. Because you're able to kind of pull out so many different things that are happening in this photo. And it's a lot of things that your students are going to be familiar with. They've seen their parent or guardian cooking before. They might have a little brother or sister. They're able to make those connections and pull out specific things from the image. Over here, all the way on the right, we have another photo from our KHS collection that would be great for a VTS session. So this photo shows a nurse treating a woman's eye. She's actually a part of the Frontier Nursing Initiative, and observers and students alike would be able to notice many differences in this photograph from what they know that nurses look like and do today versus what's depicted in this photograph. So we're going to start conducting our own VTS session. When you are conducting it in your classroom, you're going to be wanting to focus on these 3 key questions. So we have, what's going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can you find? So we are going to practice. I'm going to be the facilitator, and you guys are going to be responding to my prompts with the image on the next screen. And I want you to notice when you are responding to the questions, I'm going to try my best to repeat what you say. So repeat what you're saying to me. I'm going to repeat it back to you. All right. So I'm going to give you a few silent moments. You might want to give your students maybe a silent minute to do this, just to look over the image. But since we're all adults here, I'll go ahead and I'll just give you a few silent moments to view this image. All right, so as I ask these questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or even respond in the chat. But the more you unmute yourself and participate, the more we're going to get from this experience. So what's going on in this picture?
It looks like these guys are about to go into the mine, or they've just come out of the mine.
What do you see that makes you say that?
Well, these are my old lady eyes getting closer and closer to the screen, but they're on this rail, so they're moving something in and out of this cave-like area. Their hats are what I think miners would have used, and it appears that there might be coal under the feet of some of the guys that are standing up on this low rail car.
Great. So you're able to see maybe some of the different tools that these gentlemen are using. You see that the rail cars might have coal on them. What more can we find?
Okay, so I'm probably going to get a reputation if people watch very many of his videos, but one of the things I noticed that I can't find are any women, and so it makes me just think about kind of progress that has been made, but also how traditionally this was work that was dominated more by males in the industry.
Well, that's a great observation. I love that you brought that up. You're right, there are no women in this photo. In a few minutes, I'll provide some more historical context, but I like that you brought that up. What more can we find in this image? Don't be shy. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You're good. One of the things that stands out to me is what seems to be a couple groups of men. So you have the ones in the back who, again, I'm not sure if this is just my vision, but it looks like they have been in the mines or doing some mining, because it looks like they are in darker clothes, or there is dirt, it seems like, that is visible, where there is this stark contrast between them and just to the left, the guy in the bright white shirt. And so I don't know if that makes me think maybe it's a shift change, or maybe some people are coming out as others are going in, but that's just the noticing.
Oh, that was great. So you're saying that maybe it's a shift change. You're noticing that some of the men in this image, they have dirtier clothes than the other one, so it possibly is a shift change. Very good. What more can we find?
To kind of piggyback on what he just said, my thinking was that maybe they have different jobs that they're doing. Like you see the one, like a couple that are on horses, and then you see the guy over on the left who has like a different tool than what maybe some of the others do. And just like and like when he was pointing out the different looks, I could see maybe even that they had different, even though they're all working at the mine, maybe they had different jobs that they did there.
So you're saying maybe they have different positions. It might not be a shift change, but some guys are working in the mines and towing the coal out. These gentlemen with the cleaner shirts, they might be working outside of the mines. Those are all really great observations. All right. Does anybody else have more that they can find?
This is kind of an aside, but it's my age and my eyes. Like, I want so desperately to be able to blow that picture up. I keep thinking, how can I make that bigger? And it also makes me think about having, if you can, individual copies for students so that they can even be, really right on there.
Yeah, no, honestly, I would have loved to have been able to send you guys these images to be able to look up close. Also, too, having it blown up on some type of smart board that you have in the classroom too will definitely help with this image.
Yeah, because you can really zoom in then. Because there's things that I'm like, I can't tell for sure what certain things are, but I mean, it's a great image and there's a lot happening. I just kept thinking, oh, I wish I could get a little closer.
Yeah, and to be honest, it looks a little bit clearer on my screen. I think it just has to do with the fact that I'm sharing it, makes it a little bit more pixelated, but I love that suggestion. And I think that would be very valuable to even split your students up into small groups and have them all like be huddled around like an image. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so I really appreciate you guys being willing to participate in that VTS session. I find it's easier to navigate this kind of strategy if you've participated in one yourself. Obviously, we're all adults here, so our session went a little bit quicker than your students might. Plus, there's less of us here than there would be in a classroom. So typically a VTS session, depending on the age group, I would say probably with second graders, max 10 minutes, if you can get that. I'm a former kindergarten teacher, so my max would probably be about 3 minutes. All right, so I just want to provide you guys with a little bit extra context about this image, and this is something that you'll want to share with your students after the VTS session. So this photograph is actually from the past and from 1918, and it's depicting coal miners outside of a mine here in Kentucky. To touch back on, there's no females in this photograph. Females did not start going into coal mines. I learned this in my research for this learning experience. Somewhere later in the 1900s, I believe around the 60s and 70s. So it was a predominantly male profession. All right, so moving forward with the learning experience, I would suggest that you guys create a KWL chart to kind of map out the progression of what your students know about coal mining. You would pose these questions as a whole group and fill in the answers as they respond. I obviously can't write on I probably could write on the screen, but my handwriting wouldn't be the best. So I'm just going to have you guys another share opportunity, and we'll see what some people know, what some people might wonder. So what do you know about coal mining as of right now? Feel free to share out.
It gives us energy.
That's a great one. Anybody else? What do you know about coal mining?
It can be a dangerous job.
It can be a dangerous job, you're right. I can share my experience. Before creating this learning experience, I did not know much about coal mining. I grew up on the coastline of North Carolina, so there was not a lot of mines around. So if this was the first time I was being approached with this question, I would be like, I don't know anything besides the fact that it can be a really dirty job. What
So
do
if
you
I
want?
were, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking like kind of as a kid standpoint, but also like this is true story. But my like I could see a kid saying, well, my grandpa worked in the coal mines and which my papa did. But they also might, point out that like my papa has black lung, so they might talk about how some of them, got sick, which kind of goes with what Heather was talking about the danger.
Yeah, no, that honestly, that would be a great observation. It's very valid to be able to put that on this chart too, because that's something they're coming to this learning experience knowing already.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
piggybacking off that, I think that depending where you are in the state, kids might have different experiences or
mhm.
with the coal industry, family working in the coal industry, or just have been presented with information that kind of ties the industry to the state, like in almost like a cultural, historical sense.
Oh, that was great. What do you guys wonder about coal mining? This can be anything.
We have a couple of wonderings in the chat. So
Oh,
both Letitia and Maggie. Maggie shared that it was hard to see, which we discussed. She said she noticed no females because that is her lens. Her wonder, were there members of other races and other ethnicities, multiple ages, etc. And Letitia wondered that as well.
And you all are gonna be like, gosh, Letitia can't come any more of these. I think if you present this to students right this minute, it is a very hot political issue. Without coming down on any side, don't misunderstand me, but like kids are gonna have very strong feelings about this as a political issue. Maybe not so much in elementary, but I suspect even there in areas where coal mining has been prevalent for a long time, it's still gonna be politically charged.
yeah, no, that's a great observation. And sometimes you never know what's a kid's gonna say, especially in second grade.
You never know. Ever
Yeah.
K-12, you never know.
So it's very valid to bring that up. All right. So just gonna wrap up this KWL chart. We will come back to it to talk about what we learned at the end. We're not just getting rid of it. We'll come back. All right. So like a few of you shared, depending on what part of Kentucky you reside in, your students might have limited knowledge or they might have more knowledge about the coal industry. We're going to watch a short video that provides a look at coal mining then and now. If I was watching this in the classroom, I would pause the video periodically to talk about these questions that are here on the screen. But I'm going to give you guys a short moment to look over those questions and then kind of just try to process them as we're watching the video. I'll give you 10 seconds to take a quick look at them. All right, I know that was so quick. I'll bring it back up in a little bit after this video though.
Coal mining today is a difficult and dangerous job, and it's also one in decline. In 2018, the coal industry employed under 83,000 people. But there was a time, not so long ago, that the coal industry numbered 10 times that many workers. In the early 20th century, hundreds of thousands of people worked the mines, and tens of thousands of people died there. Life was very different for the people who helped power this country through the Industrial Revolution. At the time, motor cars were uncommon, and so mine workers and their families lived close to the mines. Aggressive gender norms dictated roles within the families. Men and boys as young as 9 went underground, and girls were barred from the mines. Instead, they were left to battle against the ever-present black dust that would dirty laundry as it dried and crust around people's nostrils as they slept. Women also tackled the financial struggles of the families, requiring economy and creativity in maintaining their homes and feeding their families. Even miners who had been on the job for years rarely made more than a few dollars each week. One 1902 account claimed a daily salary of $1.60 for a 10-hour shift. Today, that would be about $4.50 an hour. It wasn't uncommon for much of that money to be clawed back by the mining company either. Money might be deducted for housing, for medical care, even for coal. Necessities from the company's store might be deducted automatically as well, and sometimes the company might not react too well if you chose to shop somewhere other than the company's store. And then there was the mining itself. Few jobs outside the military have ever required workers to band together as miners did. They spent every day pushing heavy carts into the darkness, only their headlamps and the lamps of their fellows for light, often trudging through water until they came to a place where they could use dynamite and hand tools to break a vein of coal into heavy chunks and drag heavier carts back up. No one could claim it was an easy job, and the mining companies of the time did little to make it easier. Unionized mines like those in Ohio paid better and were usually safer, but in other places, like West Virginia, coal companies fought unionization and regulation bitterly, sometimes bringing in scab workers and kicking miners' families out of company homes. To make matters worse, companies frequently ignored or soft-pedaled what safety regulations there were, leaving workers to rely on each other against the dangers of mining. These dangers were profound. Natural gas was deadly, both because it could suffocate workers in a badly ventilated mine and because it could explode unexpectedly during blasting. But the worst danger was ceiling collapses, which often left miners trapped, occasionally rescued by their comrades, but far too often killed. Over the years, there have been many improvements in the mining industry. Women now work alongside men, and though still dangerous, the work isn't as deadly as it used to be. In 1917, 2,696 coal mining deaths were recorded. In 2017, the number was 15. Despite that progress, though, mining is still very hard work. Out of the thousands of families who have worked in and around the mines, does your family have any connections to coal history?
All right. Here are those questions again. I'm just walk through them. Who mined coal in the past? What were some of the difficulties with coal mining? Who mines coal today? And how has coal mining changed from the past to today? We're going to chug along here, keeping those questions in mind. Now that your students would also have a basic understanding of coal mining, you would go through and you'd review the definitions for the factors of production, and they're going to be providing some examples that they had from the video. So this learning experience might not be your day one introduction to the factors of production. So your students would be able to possibly share and fill in the definition part of this chart. But to save us time, I went ahead and filled in the definition part for us. So here are these definitions. And I would love for you guys to unmute again. And after you look over the definitions, give us some examples from the video that you remember. An example for land, an example for labor, capital, and entrepreneurial skills.
I think the entrepreneurial skills for me came through when they were talking about the coal mining like company and how like they talk about the regulations and how they fought back against unionizing and the company store and things like that. And so it did not paint entrepreneurial skills in the best light. But I think if you were trying to have a most generous interpretation, that might be an example of entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah, no, that's right on the money there. How about for land, labor, and capital? Any examples?
Land,
think
I could definitely see the coal.
Yes.
and then for labor, I think that it talked about kids young as 9, but early on being a very gendered role with men being in the coal mine. But I do think a couple of things that stood out to me is it talked about how it changed, and now there is more women in the industry as well. I do think one of the things that was interesting about the screenshots or the photographs that made up the video was it also showed people from different backgrounds. So it showed a couple that were black, and it showed some others that may be from other countries. And so there was that kind of like not just people within this area, but it seemed that people were moving possibly to this area to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation. How about for capital? Anything for capital?
I saw the carts coming out of the coal mines. I saw the dynamite and the tools used to actually put the dynamite in the walls when they were talking about the conditions not being safe. Those were just 2 I saw.
Yeah, no, great observations. So here are some possible answers that your students may have, and then many of these you guys also shared. So kudos to you. All right. So to help kind of develop a sense of place for your students, the addition of using this map I'm going to be showing you would be a great visual representation of coal mining in Kentucky. So this map provides different information that can be toggled on and off, including the Kentucky county boundaries, as you can see in this still of the map, different mined out areas, and then areas that still have active like coal sites in them. I believe Heather and Lauren are going to drop this link in the chat for you so you can explore it later or you can explore it now. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll open it up so we can explore it together. All right, so mine already has a bunch of the toggles checked. So this is obviously the outline of Kentucky, and it's showing the different counties. If I was using this in the classroom with my students, I might start with the county names off, just so they can see that basic outline of Kentucky, and then adding that county name back in for them, and trying to locate where they are on the Kentucky map would be powerful to see how close they might be to where coal mining happens. We also have different mine portals and mined out areas. I'll uncheck this one and you guys just watch how many mines we still have active. Here we go. I'm going to uncheck the ones that are no longer active. There's not much of a difference. Most of it is over here in the western part of the state where those mined out areas are going to be. I'll go ahead and uncheck the coal mining maps that we have available, and you're going to see most of this disappear. So this is just giving that rough kind of outline again of Kentucky and where mountains are. So you'll see if you start with this bare map here and you add these in slowly, it kind of paints a sense of place and for your students to kind of latch on to. So I'll add the mines back in and then the county names back in. I think it's very valuable to use maps and paint that sense of place. All right. So this is going to be my favorite part, but before we analyze those artifacts, it will be helpful to kind of establish any new vocabulary that they might not have come across before. So we're going to establish what an artifact is. So an artifact is an object from the past that helps us learn about how people lived, worked, and played many years ago. And these images that you see on the screen here, these are all different artifacts and objects that we have in our collection here at KHS. And these are going to be on site either displayed in our galleries or in our archives. So, to get into the meat of this learning experience, Kentucky coal miners use all of these different essentials on the screen, and all of these have been used by actual coal miners in Kentucky, and they're housed here at KHS. So this is a full artifact list that your students would be able to explore and analyze throughout this learning experience. You would have pictures blown up of these images, of these artifacts, so they can get a closer, better look at them. So we have a pick, a miner's cap, bird cage, a carbide lamp, a coal car, a knee pad, and a coal ball, which is just a lump of coal. One of the cool things that we have here at KHS is that each of these artifacts is going to have a page in our digital collection, in our catalogs, that provides more details than just looking at the artifact. So they really add a layer of context for your students after they complete the artifact analysis chart. So I have this pick here. It's from 1920, and some pretty cool notes, I think, is that this was used in Eastern Kentucky coal mines in the early 20th century. The person that donated this said that it was used to lay the railroad track that would carry the coal cars into the coal mines. All right, so we're going to go ahead and analyze an artifact as a whole group, which is something that you might want to model yourself as a whole group with your class before breaking into smaller groups. It's really up to your teacher discretion what you think your students would be more successful at. So the artifact that you and I are going to be analyzing together is the canary cage. I'll guide us through each section of the artifact analysis chart here on the screen. And you all are more than welcome to unmute to share your responses to these questions. All right, so we have the I see section. So what are things that you see, observe, or notice about this artifact? Paying kind of special attention and considering the size, the shape, the texture, and the color. Feel free to unmute yourself, share out, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
It's wooden and it looks like a cage, like it would hold something.
Great observation. Anybody else?
It looks like I can't tell what the white pieces in there is, but it looks like maybe it's for water or something. So it's definitely meant to keep something alive.
I know that somebody already pointed out that it was a cage, but going with kind of piggybacking on both of them, what was just said is that like where it's open, like it's a box, but it's open. So going back to, I think it was Thomas that was just talking about maybe keeping something alive, that maybe, you want something that whatever you've got in there needs air.
These are all great observations, and most likely things that your students are also going to notice too. So they're able to write down their observations in this section for IC. Now we have I think. How do you think this artifact was? Actually, yeah. Okay. How do you think this artifact was used? What makes you say that? And then things to consider would be who used the artifact and the time when it was made. And like I said, feel free to unmute and share if you're comfortable.
I think we pointed out that it was wood, and that connects back to the video when they talked about how many things can be really explosive in the mines. And so not having things that might spark or might be exceptionally combustible might have been important to them.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation.
I've always heard the expression about a canary in a coal mine, so I'm immediately assuming it's some sort of a bird cage and that was used to keep them safe. And I don't know exactly how that was, if the bird not being alive alerted them that the air quality was bad and still gave them time to move out. But I feel like it's something like that, but I don't know exactly.
I love that you're bringing in your prior knowledge and adding it into this. I think that's something that students may also do. And I think that adds a great layer to this overall artifact analysis chart. Thank you for sharing that. So the last section of the artifact analysis chart is going to be I wonder. What does this artifact make you wonder? Consider how it might look different today.
I wonder what it's for. I'm anxious to learn.
I'm hoping the canaries are more protected today. And maybe
Yeah.
we have a different way of measuring safety.
Same wondering, Maggie.
I do have an answer to that question in a little bit. I also wondered the same thing. So I went on a deep dive.
Also,
Really
in
great.
looking at it, couldn't tell whether there was or where the door was, or if the entire like top lifted. Like, I think when we think about cages today, we see like a hinged door in some way. And so I couldn't, in looking at that spot, how that happened. So I assume that it either disassembles or reassembles relatively easily. But I was wondering about that.
That's a great wondering. I've not seen this artifact in person. I'm assuming as well that it has a hatch somewhere. It just might not be visible in this picture. But I will definitely take a look and see if I can find it in our archives, and maybe I can get an answer to that. All right. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of work through that artifact analysis chart with me. Following that session, whether it be whole group or small group, with the various artifact photographs, your students would be discussing these questions on the screen, using the think, pair, share strategy. So I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this routine, but here's a very short video to kind of go over and give you a refresher.
We want all students to get actively involved in thinking about the lesson topic. In the Think, Pair, Share method, the teacher uses 3 steps to get students involved. The first step is think. The teacher asks the students a question and then has them think quietly about their answers for a few moments. The second step is pair. The teacher puts the students in pairs and asks them to discuss their answers with each other. If the class size is large, the teacher can put students into groups of 3 or 4 to discuss their answers. In that case, the teacher gives a little more time for this step. The third step is share. The teacher chooses a student from each pair or group to share their group's answers with the whole class. The Think, Pair, Share method helps students to think more deeply and allows them to learn from each other.
All right. I always love a good refresher when it comes to the millions of strategies that there are out there in education. So our discussion questions that we have are, what do artifacts tell us about the time when it was made and used? Do we still use these artifacts today? If so, how are they different? And I know some of you guys were already kind of wondering that stuff. So in order to virtually think, pair, share, we are going to attempt to place you guys into breakout rooms for a short period of time to kind of talk with a partner about these questions. And when you return, please be ready to share out what you talked about.
Okay. I think they need, so I think I know how to do an announcement now. So I'll put, and Tammy and Thomas, it would not let me assign you to a breakout room. Do you see an option to join one? Because if so, feel free to do that. Like you all were grayed out for some reason.
I don't see one.
Okay, well, we can share in the main room in just a moment. Elsie, we need to get them a link to those artifacts, right?
We don't necessarily do. Are we able to like announce that they're just talking about that bird cage?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think Maggie was asking which ones. So I think maybe they were thinking of those other ones that we'd preview. Yes.
That's my bad. I should have clarified that.
No, it's fine.
Elsie, are all of those on the Kentucky Historical Society website?
Yes,
Are they digital? Okay.
Yeah, and even the photographs as well. We have two separate collections. We have a goodness, if I could remember, a digital collection and then an object collection. And the artifacts come from the object side, and then the photos come from the digital side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, they should be good. I sent it and it said it went through. So
okay,
learned a new skill. So now we know how to get them the questions if we need to, but I'm sure they're good.
So I accidentally hung up and I don't know how to get back in my room.
Okay, let me try to do that.
I'm sorry, I tried to hit the chat button and I hung up.
No, you're fine. Let's see. It shows that you're assigned still to that room.
It says join room 3 at the top. I think.
Okay, yeah, try that. Okay, awesome. You think about a minute?
Oh yeah, I think.
Yeah. Just tell me when and I'll hit the button.
I say 30 seconds.
Okay.
I would assume, I guess, that in terms of do we still use the canary cage, I would assume that there's something else that can pick up if there's poisonous gas or carbon monoxide that is used and that we don't use canaries anymore.
Yeah, animal cruelty.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of groups against using canaries in coal mines still.
All right, I'll go ahead and hit close.
Then I'll start sharing again.
It says that they are moving.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Welcome back. Yep.
Are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Sorry, but whatever that flourish of sound was there that happened. I don't think you guys were able to hear it, so that's good. All right. So you guys were able to kind of think, pair, share in those breakout rooms. If anybody wants to unmute themselves to talk about what they were sharing with their partner, feel free.
So one of the things we talked about in our room related to these questions, we discussed in our wonderings about how, maybe they didn't have the kind of technology that we do now that we learned about the video. And then we know that there's some form of them used today, right? Maybe not the exact bird cage that we were looking at, but that there's different tools now to look at that. One of the things that we talked about in our room was how amazing it would be if there's organizations like the Kentucky Historical Society or even in your local community that can help you curate these as like a classroom tool. So that you could actually like have students hold the images or visually look at maybe a similar something like the cage within the classroom, just because it'll help kids get really excited about whatever they're learning when they can actually, be removed from the computer screen and actually handle the artifacts. So that was something we kind of took it to the next level.
Yeah, no, those are all really great observations. We do at KHS, we have a lot of replica teaching artifacts. We don't have one of a canary cage, but I think that's something I would be more than happy to look into, because all those replica artifacts, students are and the public are able to hold and touch, and it does really add like a sense of, like I said, place and a deeper connection to what you're learning. So I 100% agree with that. Anybody else want to share what they discussed in their Think and Pair breakout rooms?
So I was solo in my breakout room, but I had a great conversation with myself. But I was really interested in like Googling over here myself about like, is this essentially like the precursor to like a carbon monoxide detector and things like that? So I was thinking about, well, how we might use these artifacts today, or things that had their impetus in some of these artifacts, but maybe we have what we would hope is a safer and more sophisticated way to maybe do that now.
That's a great connection. It's very cool that you Googled it too. I'm going to share a little bit on the next slide about this bird cage, also known as the canary cage. This is the description we have on our KHS collections, digital collections. So this is a canary cage from a coal mine. This cage was purchased actually in Bardstown at an antique shop, but it's roughly around, was used around 1900. So something very cool that I learned just going through this learning experience is that they used to use birds and canaries alike to detect the presence of gas in the coal mines. So the canary would unfortunately pass out if, because of their such small systems, the canary would pass out if there was gases present, and that would alert the coal miners to exit immediately. And a lot of the time, the canaries, they would be revived. And something I did a little bit of a deep dive on is the coal miners, they revered these birds and they took very, very good care of them. There are several historic images out there, not that we have in our collection at KHS, but elsewhere, of coal miners reviving these birds because they want them to continue to survive and thrive. Luckily, there are other measures used and machines now, so we're not harming these animals. Just to add some context there. All right, so scooting into the end portion of our learning experience, as educators, I know we always need to gauge our student understanding at the ends of lessons. So the following few slides are going to depict a differentiated formative assessment that you guys can utilize if you're using this learning experience. So what are the factors in production of coal mining used in the image below? This is another image from our KHS digital collections. So I made a cut and label version, and there will be an answer key in the lesson plan format that does get posted later on to the KDE website. So there's an answer key for each of these. So we have our cut and label. We have a label where they're writing in their answers with the answer key there. And then we have, similar to the second slide that you guys saw with a different image, they would be circling the factors of production they see in this photograph. And I very much enjoy this photograph because it's very crisp, it's very clear. So Circling in red, the land that they see, so it would be the coal. Blue is the labor, these gentlemen here that are in that small cramped space mining the coal, and then capital in green. And they're going to be able to circle the various tools that they see. We have a shovel. We have another artifact that is in the artifact list that we didn't look at today is a coal miner's cap. They have those present here, as well as this machine down here towards the bottom that this gentleman is leaning on. All right, our task aligned with our supporting question. Our supporting question, just to review here, is what are the factors of production used in coal mining in the past and today? So please feel free to shout out any answers after you unmute yourself. Students would be able to write or draw into these boxes, but for time purposes and virtual purposes, you guys will just be sharing out. So something from the past for land and today for land. If we could just walk through this, feel free to share.
Coal.
Perfect. And that could go in the past and today as well.
I think your more technology savvy students might even like take a screenshot of the map before, like with the toggles that you talked about, and then like the map now with the ones that had been retired.
I know some of my first graders this past year, they were very, very savvy and taking screenshots of everything. So I definitely think that could happen, especially a second grade. How about for labor? Something in the past, something today, something that might be different in the past than it is today?
Yeah, I think my thoughts on that are go back to what Maggie said at the first meeting today, where in the past it was a male-dominated field in terms of coal mining, and today it is men and women.
Right on the nose. It's also very cool here to see you guys talking the whole way through this experience about the past and today, the differences. So hopefully you see that as well with your students. How about capital?
Well, I think that goes to the canary cage before, as opposed to more sophisticated safety measures might be. And that could even go into like the, I know one of the pictures earlier had like the hat that they wore and the knee pads. Like hopefully there are more sophisticated examples of those now.
Yes, 100%. And then for the
maybe the carts. I was just still talking about the capital, like the carts.
Go ahead.
I would imagine that maybe that's changed to an extent today, but I'm sure that it's possibly still some of the same. Just maybe a little bit easier and not having that. But I know in the video it looked like things were moving more by machines rather than them pushing and pulling as much. So maybe more manual carts with the capital, and then maybe more machinery with the today versus the past and the manual carts.
That was a great observation, and linking it back to the video as well, what you saw in the video. Awesome. For entrepreneurial skills, just to save time, we really focus on land, labor, and capital for this learning experience, but in the video, they talked about the coal mining companies in the past and then coal mining companies today. So here is a few of possible student answers, and then you guys did an amazing job filling in this as well with a lot of the same answers. So my last thing for you to wrap it all up with its pretty nice bow is kind of coming back to this KWL chart to chart out and look at the process of the learning that's happened within this experience. Okay, who can share what they've learned about coal mining?
I think the map that you shared was really eye-opening for me, because I think if you had asked me what regions of Kentucky coal mining was most prevalent in, I would have directed you to one side of where I live, as opposed to really recognizing that it's really happening in a couple different areas across the state.
I had that same observation when we found that map. I wasn't aware that a lot of coal mining happened in the western side of the state. Anybody else? What did you learn?
I think the one thing that stood out to me was the statistic about the kind of amount of coal jobs. And so today it's a tenth of what it was at the beginning of the 20th century. So that was something that stuck with me.
That's a great connection, Thomas. I think honestly too, the fact that it might be less, not as strenuous of a job, but there's more machinery and stuff to replace some of the jobs before. I think that definitely has to do with that stark difference of available jobs. But great observation.
The age at which they started, I guess I knew that they would have started young, but I didn't think that young.
Mm-hmm. I'm always astonished by the ages of when children went to work in the past as well. So I'm glad that we've shifted away from that. Anybody else? All right. That is all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. I know it's 6 o'clock. You're probably ready for dinner, but I'm really thankful and happy that you guys were eager to participate, and that you made it a really excellent experience for me, this being my first webinar with KHS and KDE. So if you have any additional questions or want to find out more about our resources here at the Kentucky Historical Society, please feel free to email me, or even you can scan this QR code with your phone, and it'll pull up our educational resources. I'm always adding new stuff, so keep checking back.